Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Down Periscope, Up Periscope. I'm your host, Tim, and one fairly common and rather reasonable question we get asked as tour guides on the submarine is, could Blueback ever be put back into service? I will eventually get to that, probably in the next episode, but first we really need to look at why Blueback was decommissioned in the first place in 1990. So, I have dug up a report from the files on the submarine, and we'll be looking at least some of the reasons about why she was taken out of service. So, referencing the report that I found, I'm going to be spending most of this episode just literally quoting directly from it. So that's why the wording will be a little bit stilted, you might say. So the Pacific Board of Inspection and Survey conducted a survey of the submarine on 17 August 1990 when it was in San Diego, California. They published their report on 23 August 1990 in which they found, quote, the USS Blueback SS581 unfit for further service due to the excessive costs required to upgrade the ship for current and future combat operations. They also found that material deficiencies existed that significantly degraded the ship's ability to carry out assigned primary missions. Now, I should sort of preface this by saying that every ship, especially a warship like a submarine in this case, has deficiencies to it in some way. We're talking about something that is so complex, that has so many different systems on it, from propulsion to hydraulic, electrical, combat systems, this, that, and the other, that it will just have deficiencies. Nothing will ever work perfectly, and things are always breaking down. They're always needed constant preventive maintenance, repairs, and just general cleaning and all that. So things on ships break down. That's just kind of life on a ship. So there's always something to do. There's always something to fix. I hear it's pretty much the similar with like large aircraft, like bomber aircraft as well. So things are always breaking down. Not all systems work 100% of the time. But the catch here is that at this point in her life, Blueback had so many systems deficiencies that she literally could not do the job she was designed to do. So let's go a little bit deeper into this. The following material deficiencies were noted. Regarding required operational capability ASU-4, that is her ability to detect, identify, localize, and track surface ship targets, she was found to be mission degraded in her ability to detect, localize, and track targets with radar because the ST radar capability was deleted to support an experimental radio system. She was also mission degraded in her ability to detect and track surface targets visually because the number 2 periscope could not be fully rotated when it was fully raised. Regarding operational capability MOB-1, that is her steam to design capability, Blueback was mission degraded because 2 of the 3 main generators and 1 of the 2 main motors were grounded. 2 of the 3 main engines were inoperative because they had been placed in layup condition. Also, the main motor lube oil systems and the main shafting were placed in layup status and would need 1 to 2 weeks to restore to service. Furthermore, diesel exhaust valves VH7, VH10, and VH11 had worn bushings. Other miscellaneous steam-to-design capability deficiencies were found that the flood ports for the numbers 3 and 4 fuel ballast tanks leaked past their seats. The number 2 seawater service pump suction and discharge valves also had seat leaks themselves. Regarding required operational capability MOB-12, that is, the ability to maintain the health and well-being of the crew, Blueback was found to be mission degraded for maintaining closed atmospheres because the oxygen banks were placed in layup status and charged with nitrogen. Additionally, the ship did not have any current atmosphere control equipment installed. For example, she had no oxygen generators, no COH2 burners, no CO2 scrubbers. So a lot of people, especially modern submariners who come aboard, they smell the submarine, they're like, hey, I can still smell the amine system. That is a modern CO2 scrubbing system on submarines today. And we're like, no, there's no amine system on this boat. There never was. There is no atmosphere control system on this submarine. So what you're smelling is not amine. That's the smell of a diesel boat. Now, Blueback was also found to be mission degraded in ensuring the operation of the potable water system in a manner consistent with accepted sanitary procedures and standards. The number 1 evaporator was placed in layup status, and the number 2 evaporator was inoperative because of a pinhole leak in the preheater. Her auxiliary systems were also found to have deficiencies. The control surfaces, that is, the hydraulic ram for the fairwater planes, was grooved and the chrome plating was flaked and pitted, and the stern plane's ram's water and hydraulic ends were rusted and pitted. Furthermore, the rudder ram's water end was grooved as well. For her air systems, the number 1 and 4 air banks Marotta valves leaked past their seats, and the ship's whistle air reducer did not regulate. The number 2 high-pressure air compressor was inoperative due to a grounded motor. For her trim and drain pump systems, when last tested, the trim pump's capacity was 490 pounds per minute instead of the 894 pounds per minute that was required, so about half of what it should have been. The drain pump's capacity was 600 pounds per minute instead of the 894 pounds per minute that was expected of it. She also had electrical deficiencies. For propulsion systems, 2 of the 3 main generators were inoperative, the number 2 generator's field windings and the number 3 generator's armature were grounded, the number 1 main motor's field windings were grounded, the main propulsion cabling was aged and deteriorated, the main propulsion circuit breakers and control cabinet and ICV panels had worn components which were no longer supply supported, the forward and after battery groups had exceeded their 30-month service guarantee periods. The batteries were placed into service back in June of 1987. Now, regarding this, we have heard reports from some of the sailors on the decommissioning crew of Blueback that one of her electric motors caught fire, and it was a pretty serious fire, to the point where it basically just destroyed the thing at some point in time. So this would have necessitated cutting open the hull, pulling out the existing electric motor, and just replacing the whole thing itself. But the scuttlebutt was that the Navy was actually eyeing decommissioning Blueback anyway, sometime around like 1991. Since her electric motor caught fire, that basically put the kibosh on that whole plan. So in short, even had that not happened, the boat probably would not have remained in service much longer anyway. In terms of our electrical distribution systems, the number 3 75 kVA 60 Hz motor generator was inoperative because of extensive exciter mechanical damage. The number 2 25 kVA 400 Hz motor generator had a history of lowering the DV bus ground below the Type Commander's 200k ohm limit. Cabling throughout the ship was aged and hardened. Many cables no longer had adequate slack to support further wiring repairs inside distribution components. Supply support for major direct current auxiliary power circuit breakers, fuse panels, and controllers was no longer available or was limited. For her interior communications, complete supply support was no longer available for the Mark 19 Mod 3A gyro compass control cabinet and communications circuits 1MC, 7MC, and 31MC. Damage control capabilities. This would be a major problem today. The Emergency Air Breathing, or EAB system, was not certified for routine use. And again, one of the things that we have heard is that she originally never had an EAB system on it. So she only has about like 8 EAB manifolds that I've counted throughout the submarine, which is not nearly what modern submarines do have nowadays, even though they are bigger. From what I've heard, the EAB system on the submarine was retrofitted onto it sometime in the 70s, I want to say. I don't know exactly when, but yeah, it was relatively new to the submarine. In terms of our combat systems and our operational equipment, regarding electronic support measures, Band 7 of the AN-WLR-1G was inoperative. The WLR-1G system is no longer supported by formal Navy training and the supply system and would need replacement with the WLR-1H. Communications. The ship was not configured with a simultaneous 4-channel Verdun broadcast system as required by the Navy. The audio mode of the AN-BRM2 tape recorder was also inoperative. Only one of the 2 high-frequency transmitters and very low to medium-frequency receivers required had been installed. She also had problems with her masts and sail. The AN Bird 6 mast had excessive bearing clearances and rattled with mechanical agitation. Yeah, that wouldn't be good. That would cause quite a bit of noise. Radar-absorbent material was also missing on both the Bird 6 and ESM masts. Excessive gaps around the mast contributed to flow noise. The sail was severely corroded around the radar and ESM masts as well. I wonder if that was any contribution to the issue of why they were no longer raised, about why last time she was in dry dock, those masts actually lost pressure and lowered into the sail. I don't know. Now let's talk about her weapons capabilities, or somewhat lack thereof. Sonar systems. The BQR-2 and SQS-49 sonar sets were reported to be fully operational. However, 34 of the 62 BQG-2 sonar receiving set hydrophones failed the PMS specification for sensitivity. The DUG-1C provided limited capability for detecting and no capability for analyzing acoustic emissions. The only narrowband capability was provided by the BQR2 set. The Mark 101 fire control system had been laid up but was reported to be fully operational. That said, the system was only capable of processing a single target at a time and did not support current target motion analysis techniques. It could also not accommodate any Harpoon or Tomahawk missiles. So Blueback was purely a torpedo submarine. The Mark 58 torpedo tubes' sea pressure gauges had been removed for calibration, rendering all 6 tubes inoperative. Stop bolts for all tubes failed the PMS specified torque tolerances. The ship reported that torpedo ejection pump ram cycle times exceeded specifications at test depth. Furthermore, superstructure areas on the deck were rusted and deteriorated. There were numerous longitudinal deck supports that were rusted through, and extensive structural repairs would have been required to extend the life of the ship. Navigation systems. The number 1 periscope had been replaced with a modified Type 8 periscope, which did not have ST radar capability. The number 2 periscope could not be rotated when fully raised. It's believed that this was because of a faulty bearing. And in terms of her coal rigs, the stern light was inoperative because of a defective cable which would require dry docking the ship to correct. The stern anchor light could not retract, and the ship's whistle valve would stick in the open position when operated. Great. Sure, that was pleasant. And lastly, supply. For repair parts, most repair parts had been offloaded. The ship reported that a substantial portion would be usable by other units. The ship had limited storage space for repair parts and no space available for current tools for supply management, such as the SNAPS 2 computer system. And lastly, food service. The food service operation had been secured. The ship reported that all galley equipment was operational. However, the limited space designed for provision stowage required stowing food throughout the ship during deployments. The small size of the galley and dining area precluded amenities such as a salad bar and soda machine. Oh dear God, not those. We can't live without those, can we? So yeah, she was deficient in a lot of places. Further cost analysis actually substantiated the findings as well. Now, when Blueback was built, to acquire her, it cost about $20,700,000, or we say about $21 million. To replace her at the time would have cost $171,200,000. Her estimated scrap value at the time was $200,000. Yeah, real cheap, huh? And the estimated cost of reactivating her was around $55 million. So she would have cost more just to reactivate than it even cost to buy her, essentially. That being said, the estimated modernization repair costs and the estimated repair costs were not available. In the end, the board recommended that if the ship is to be stricken from the Naval Vessel Register, all usable equipment designated by the Cognizant Technical Systems Commands should be removed prior to disposal. If the ship were to be disposed of, it should be done in accordance with the laws and regulations for the disposal of naval ships. So ultimately, Blueback was decommissioned on 1 October 1990 and laid up in the Pacific Reserve Fleet in Bremerton, Washington. She was stricken from the Naval Register on 30 October 1990, but a public campaign convinced the Navy eventually to turn her into a museum ship, and she came to OMSI as a permanent exhibit in February 1994 and opened up for tours in May of that year. So that's a little bit about the report that I read regarding Blueback's material status from a inspection survey conducted in August of 1990. So no doubt this had quite a bit of weight in regard to the Navy's decision to decommission the submarine. So yeah, she could barely do what she was built to do anyways. So yeah, the thing was old, simply put, in 1990. At the time, she was getting pretty long in the tooth. So there's that. In the next episode of this, we'll be kind of going into some more ideas about, could Blueback ever be put into service? But in this one, we just wanted to look at why was she decommissioned in the first place? A lot of problems with her.